Good morning. I am so excited to share with you some magic that happened in the night that I just had to film this first thing in the morning so I can show you, because this is Max, and I don't know if you can see from where you are, but Max has almost tripled in size. Well more than doubled, and this is the magic that we were waiting to happen. There's still a little bit of work to do so that he will have that good fermented flavor, but last night I could tell that he was smelling a little more yeasty and a little less like just flour. And I was so excited to wake up this morning and see what has happened. The bubbles are huge and he looks wonderful. And I was thinking about this, and it's not really actually magic. It's science and it's rhythm. We talked about rhythm last night. It's also consistency, just doing the same thing over and over. While I'm feeding this morning, I want to share a story with you. We're gonna feed these the same thing we've always been feeding them. We're gonna remove half. We're gonna feed them half a cup of flour and a quarter cup of water. That's 60 grams of each if you're weighing it. And our mini starter, she looks good too. She's doing exactly what we would expect her to do. She's rising all the way to the top. She's falling back down. She's got bubbles. She's light. She looked really good last night before bed. So she's doing all the right things. She just does it a lot faster than Max does. So while he's at his peak this morning at about 12 hours, she was at her peak last night at about 4 hours. So that's a big difference in the two. We're gonna feed her also removing 1 cup and feeding her 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of water. Several years ago, my dad got me a book called The Power of Habits. In this book, you learn all about habits and how they have the power to change lives. The power to change lives doesn't necessarily come from the activity itself. The power is actually in the habit. It's the rhythm. It's the doing the same thing consistently. Maybe your habit is walking. That's a great habit. And that is one of the habits that they talked about in the book as having the power to change your life. Because it's a small habit, a little thing that you do consistently that over time leads to other small things, leads to other habits, and those things can lead to even more things. So it's not the activity itself, it's the doing of it consistently. The activity may be good for you, but it's what it leads to, positive changes in your life, that is really powerful. Sourdough is one of those small things that requires a lot of consistency. It requires some good habits. And I think the rhythm of adding this to your day can be really beneficial. I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to sourdough. This was more than 20 years ago, and our son was having some hearing issues and some problems related to ear infections and other things, and he started, we couldn't figure out what the problem was. So we had tried all the things. He had had several sets of tubes. And I had a wonderful doctor at the time who said, you know, Connie, he said, we've treated this for 3 years. He said, let's take 6 weeks and pray about it. And it was during those 6 weeks that I was in the store, a health food store in Lubbock, and I read a thing about wheat and how wheat can cause some issues with swelling in your eardrums and other things, and I thought, well, let's try that. Let's give it a whirl. So we took wheat out of his diet, and within 3 weeks, he was doing so much better. And slowly his hearing came back and his things improved. But that left us, and the doctor, he was totally supportive of everything that we had done. But he said, you need to be off of wheat for 3 years to fix this allergy. 3 years. That's a really long time. So we had to find other things to eat and other ways of eating. So that's when I got into alternative grains like einkorn and kamut and spelt. Some things that 20 years ago were not common household things that were not easy to find. But that's what we did. And it was also during that time that I got into doing sourdough, because the way that sourdough works, it actually breaks down a lot of the things in grains that are hard to digest. So the things that were causing Bradley trouble did not seem to be causing him trouble if I used some alternative grains like spelt, which is a cousin of wheat. But if I used spelt and combined that with the magical properties of sourdough to break down all of those proteins in the bread that are hard for us to digest, then it seemed to work well and he didn't have issues. So that's how I came to do sourdough, and we have done sourdough pretty consistently ever since then. And it is a positive benefit in our life, just for the rhythm, but also for the health benefits. I'm not sure what has brought you here to do sourdough. Maybe it was just because you were curious, or maybe you love to bake and this was a new challenge. Maybe you couldn't find any yeast in the store and you needed a place to rise your bread. I had a friend that called last week, and he had not been able to get yeast in the store. And so he had fermented some grapes, and he wanted to use those grapes to rise some bread. That fermented grape juice, he wanted to use it to rise bread. So we talked about it a little bit, and he went on to work on it on his own, and he sent me a picture of his first loaf of bread, and y'all, it was beautiful. So whatever brought you to sourdough, I'm really glad you're here. We're gonna set these aside for today, and we'll come back to them this evening. They're gonna be in clean jars. We're gonna mark them. We're gonna continue on with this habit of sourdough. Good evening. It's day 5. It's the evening, and I'm so excited for you to be here. Our starters are doing great, and I'm really excited about this little bit of time with you, because we're going to get to make something together, and cooking, baking is one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. So I'm going to get to do that a little bit with you tonight and share a recipe with you. Max is looking good. He is more than doubled, and actually he's now fallen a little bit. I'm not going to feed him with you tonight because we've done that together a lot of times, and I know you can do that on your own. So we're going to remove about half of that, and then we're going to feed him a half a cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of water, and we'll just put him to bed for the night after that. Minnie has risen all the way up and fallen back down. I'm going to remove about half of this, which is going to be close to a cup, and this is what we're going to use for our bread that we're going to make together right now. And then we'll feed her 1 cup of unbleached flour and 1 cup of water before we put her to bed tonight. But let's get started. We're going to make some soda bread. I don't know why. I grew up loving soda bread. Our family made it. This is a little bit different because this is a sourdough version, but it's one that you can make with your cast off from your sourdough starter. So I'm gonna measure our 1 cup in this big 4-cup measurer, and that way we can just mix our wet ingredients right here in this cup. All right, so we're gonna go with 1 cup. Everything that's left in the jar, we're going to feed, and we'll put it to bed later. All right, to this 1 cup, we're going to add 3/4 cup of buttermilk. Lydia, would you hand me that butter? And I'm going to whisk this together. All right. Then we're going to add 1 egg. Did y'all see this egg? It's green. Isn't it beautiful? One of my chickens laid this today, and it has little brown speckles. I love this egg. All right, so we've got that whisked up. And now we're going to put 2 tablespoons of melted butter. There's 1. And there's 2. I know y'all can't see all of this, but all right. There we go. Now you can see it. All right, so we're going to whisk these wet ingredients and just set this aside while we do our dry ingredients. I'm going to weigh my flour. This one, we're using the mini starter on. I've got a loaf to show you that I made earlier with the max starter, but I'm going to show you this one with the mini starter, and we'll see how it makes up. I'm going to use 360 grams of flour. That is 3 very light cups. So you can if you really fluff up your flour, you can get close. So watch your flour and don't get it too heavy. You can always add more at the end if it's too sticky. So we're going to go with 360 grams of flour, which is a light 3 cups. We have a 1/2 cup of rolled oats. We have 2 tablespoons of sugar here. Now you can use sugar, you can use alternative sugar. If you use honey, just put that in with your wet ingredients. So we're gonna but I just chose to use sugar tonight, 2 tablespoons. We've got 1 teaspoon of salt. And we've got a teaspoon of baking soda here. Now, I don't know how you do baking soda at your house, but baking soda tends to clump, and the clumps, if you get them in your baked goods, are really bitter. So I'm gonna just use the back of this spoon to break up all of those little clumps. All right, because we don't want any bitter spots in our bread. We're gonna kind of whisk these dry ingredients together. All right, then we're gonna add our wet ingredients to that. And you'll need every drop of moisture. When I made the batch with the max starter, I did have to add a little bit of extra buttermilk because the starter is so much thicker. So if you make it with your max starter, it may be a little bit on the dry side and you can't work it all in good. What you would aim for is a lightly sticky dough. And we're gonna work it just a little bit on the cabinet before we put it on our pan. But you would like for it to come together similar to a biscuit dough. Let me set this down, we're done weighing. All right. And this is gonna be close. It is a shaggy ball. Yeah, this is gonna be just about right. So we're gonna just put this out on our floured surface on our cabinet, and then just kind of roll that sticky dough out on it. You're gonna see that there's some dry bits at the bottom, kind of scrape those on top. We're gonna work this just a little bit to get it to come together. Okay, we have our dough out here. Now I like to use a pastry knife to kind of work this dough. You can use your hands, but the dough is going to be a little bit sticky. So I just like to use a pastry knife to kind of fold it over a few times. You want it to not work in too much flour, because you would like it to be smooth on the outside but still sticky on the inside, because that's going to give you a better texture to your bread. If you don't have a pastry knife, find the largest, dullest knife in your house, and this works really well also. It's not quite as handy for me as the pastry knife, but it will work to work your dough. All right, and that's it. We've got it all put together. All right, I'm gonna put just a little more flour here, and we're gonna cut this in half. Each half we're gonna form into a loaf. And you can tell it is looking good. All right, and that's it. So once you've got it kind of formed into a nice round loaf, then we're gonna put it on our pan. And I'll show you in a minute. What I did was just a parchment pan, but you could lightly grease your baking sheet if that's what you wanna do. All right, and there we go. We've got a nice loaf. It's super soft, and that's what you want, because you still want a light bread when it comes out of the oven. All right, let me show you these. All right, so we have our 2 loaves of bread here, and we're going to slash the top of these. This is an Irish, kind of a traditional Irish bread, and I think that the story goes that the slash lets the fairies out. I'm not really sure about that, but I love history, and I love the history of food, and I think that that's really interesting. But we're gonna slash the bread, even though there's no fairies inside. You have options for slashing. I call this my super slasher. It was a gift to me from someone, so I really love this one. Here's a kind of fancy one that comes with a little leather cover. And then basically what it boils down to is all of these things are just a razor blade. Those are double-sided. This one's single-sided. This will work great. And if you don't have any of that, find the sharpest knife in your drawer and you can use it. We're gonna just put a big X on the top of these, a pretty deep X. And I'm gonna show you. This was a loaf just like this. This is the baked one that just came out of the oven. And this is the one that's not baked. So you can tell there's a lot of rise, a lot of spring in this recipe. All right, you can brush the top of these with a little milk. You can brush them with a little water. You can even put a little egg yolk on them. I am just gonna stick them in the oven just like they are. Those are gonna bake about 30 minutes. And we're gonna slice one of these that's done here. Okay, we've got a loaf here. It's kind of lovely browned a little bit, and it has more of the texture of a biscuit on the outside. Well, let's see what it looks like on the inside. It's got a really nice crust. It's a little bit crumbly when you cut it, just a little bit on the edge broke off, but you can see it's really lovely. It has a nice open, and this smeared with a little bit of butter is going to be really delicious with our jambalaya that Lydia's fixing for supper tonight. So, like I say, it's a little bit on the crumbly side, especially just around the edges where that crust is, but that's okay because those are the best parts to nibble on. And you'll smear this with a little butter and have it for dinner, and it'll be great. And your whole bread is ready in about 40 minutes. This took about 10, and it'll take about 30 minutes to bake. So that's it for tonight. I'm gonna feed our sourdough after we finish up here, and we'll put that to bed for the night. And we'll see y'all in the morning. Be sure to like, comment, and share here subscribe to my channel. The recipes are all on my website, and that link is in the description box. And join us on Facebook or Instagram because I'd really love to interact and connect with you there. Those links are also in the box. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great evening.